Welcome back to the Us versus Them channel. I'm your host Vince, and we're going to break down the next fight for the upcoming fight card this weekend. This is UFC Fight Night Rio. The fight we're breaking down is Lucas Almeida versus Michael Aswell. Almeida is currently sitting at a plus 124 favorite or underdog, and Aswell is a minus 158 favorite. Before we get in the breakdown, if I can remind you guys to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, all that shit. Like I said, I've said this before, but we really appreciate that. It's just validation that what we're doing is good content. So we appreciate that. But yeah, that's about it. So let me just get into this. Another thing I've been recently trying to remember to tell you guys is I'm trying to build my credibility up here and my ability to break down fights and make good predictions. So I want to ask you guys, go back the last couple weeks and look at my videos and just compare them to what you remember the fights being. I promise you guys, when I tell you this, we're getting kind of good at this. And a lot of these fights are getting really good at being predicted. Even when I'm wrong, I'm still right in a lot of ways. You know, a lot of times I can narrow it down to two top possible outcomes, and we hit one of the two almost every time. Last week, if you remember our parlay videos, I did say that I'm deviating a little bit from the picks that we had throughout the week, and that was just to give us a chance to make more money, honestly. You know, but if we would have stuck with our picks, we did pretty good. So just want to brag about what we're doing here a little bit and try to build some credibility for you guys. But fuck it, let's get into this. We got Lucas Almeida. When I was breaking down Lucas Almeida, one of the first things I noticed in his striking game is he typically throws a lot of straight punches. It was Andre Fili who said before their fight that the punches that Almeida does, he's very good at them. He's very good at the basics. He sticks to the basics and he sticks to just a few different combinations, and they work well for him. And to me, that's a really good assessment of Lucas Almeida on the feet. He has a nice 1-2. You know, he has a nice, I don't know all the numbers and shit, like punch to a check hook. You know, he's got a nice one of those. I think that's a 3. I'm not sure. But, you know, the basics that he does in the boxing is where he finds his success. Another area where he finds success is when he's moving forward. We saw that in the Timmy Kawamba fight. You know, he looked really good against Timmy Kawamba, sat him down a couple times, I believe, throughout the fight. Definitely sat him down in the first round. And he did his best work when he was on the front foot. When he's on the back foot, he doesn't do nearly as good of a job. We saw that in the Andre Fili fight. You know, Andre Fili put him on the back foot the entire fight. And obviously that finished in a knockout for Fili, and Almeida lost. A really good example of this that you can see both situations in one fight is the Michael Triazo fight, which was his debut fight in the UFC. When he the whole entire fight, he was going forward, and then Trizano would push him back, and then he'd go forward, and then Trizano would push him back. Almost every single time he was on the back foot, the success rate dropped dramatically as far as his ability to land the punches he's looking for. When he's on the front foot, it increases a lot. So that's going to be something to look for in this fight, if he's able to stay on the front foot. I do believe he's going to be able to do that because Aswell is not really, I mean, he will bring the fight to you for sure. He's definitely that type of fighter, but he seems more fluid in what he wants to do. But if I was his coach, I'd tell him we don't take a back step in this fight. This is a fight where the more we can stay at either planted or moving forward, the more it's going to work for Aswell. Speaking of Aswell striking, though, he also has a really good, I don't want to oversell it. He has good straight punches, too. He primarily sticks to that 1-2. He's kind of young in his career, so, you know, he's going to stick to very basic strikes, and I appreciate that. I appreciate somebody that's learning a new discipline or learning whatever it is, and they start with the basics and kind of work their way up. You know, I coach youth wrestling, and that's exactly what we do, too. We're sticking it to the very basic stuff because the very basics, if you get really, really good at it, whether it's wrestling, MMA, jiu-jitsu, boxing, whatever it is, you get really, really good at it, you can become best in the world. And that's just the reality. So, like I said, appreciate that Aswell sticks to the basics, and he sticks a lot to the 1-2s. Where he finds most success, though, is when he deviates a little bit from that. The opponents can tend to expect the 1-2, so when he goes low and hits them in the liver or throws uppercuts, he's landed some big punches in fights before doing that. Both these guys have a similar hole in their game, on their feet, where they kind of leave themselves open to being touched. For Almeida, I mean, they're both kind of similar, but they both tend to stick in the pocket a little bit too long without protecting themselves. That's the, overarching, I guess, whatever it is. But for Almeida, like I said, he typically has his chin a little too high, and it's there to get touched. We saw that in the Andre Fili fight. Fili caught him with a clean punch, knocked him down, finished him on the ground and pound, and that was the end of it. For Aswell, it's a little bit different. He typically he leaves himself open to counter punches. He will enter, his hands will stay low, and he's there to be counter punched. I believe he does that because he's willing to take a shot to give a shot, but sometimes he doesn't do a really good job of giving one when he does enter, and instead of just taking one. He's never been knocked out before in his career, and I do believe he is pretty durable with his chin. So, he can lean on that toughness to keep himself in the fight. But the one thing that sucks about that for him is you can kind of lose the aesthetic of a fight or the optics of it, which is obviously the judge's point of view. And when you look at his record, he has 3 losses, and all 3 losses come by way of decision. So I didn't get to watch all of his losses. I'm not going back, 7 years ago or whatever to watch a loss. But, the losses that I did see, he was just losing the optics of the fight. When it comes to their grappling, Almeida obviously has decent grappling. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, so he knows what he's doing with the submission game. But on the other hand, we have seen him out-wrestled before. In the Pat Sabatini fight, he was out-wrestled. Sabatini did a really good job of pushing him against the cage, getting his body lock and dragging him to the ground. And once he was there, he used wrestling sequences to keep him on the ground. That's the biggest difference between wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Is wrestling, you can maintain that control. Jiu-jitsu is kind of almost the finishing move, or the flow from one submission to another. So, like I said, his jiu-jitsu is good, but I think his wrestling is where there's a hole. And then on the other side of that, you have when it comes to Aswell's grappling, there isn't a whole lot of footage of his grappling, but he does have really good takedown defense, and he showed that in the Bogdan Gran fight. He showed that in the Dorian Ramos fight, which is his most recent regional scene fight, and it was the fight in between Contender Series and his UFC debut. So we have seen him have good takedown defense. So to be honest with you guys, I don't really see a lot of grappling in this fight. I think this is going to be a standing fight. For my official prediction, I'm leaning towards the slight favorite and Michael Aswell. I do like the team that he comes from. He comes from the 4-ounce Fight Club. And that's where, they got guys like Joshua Van. They got the Alden Correa guy who fought a couple weeks ago, looked great. Obviously we've seen the rise, the meteoric rise of Joshua Van. It's obvious that Daniel Pineda and all those guys over there are doing a really good job of getting their fighters ready. And this is just another guy on the UFC roster that comes from that Fight Club. So, I do value that a little bit for sure. And that played a factor in my decision. One thing that made me nervous a little bit about this pick is, Aswell tends to slow down a little bit in the 3rd round. I've seen that a couple times, but he does throw a lot of volume out there. So, in his defense, his opponent is slower too. Everybody's slowing down in the 3rd round, but the pacing that he fights at makes him and his opponent kind of go into pretty deep waters. So, I do worry about him losing a decision loss in that regard. So that's, but at the same time too, like I said, he comes from a great fight camp, and this is 100% the biggest fight of his career. He lost his debut fight against Balajiaki at 155, but that's not his weight class. He got a short notice call. He went in, turned a pretty solid performance in, went to the final bell with Balajiaki, who's a bigger, stronger fighter. And now he's got a full camp at a good weight class, at his weight class that he fights at. So I do believe that this is going to be the best version of Aswell that we've ever seen. So for those 2 reasons, I'm definitely picking Aswell. I'm going to go with my official prediction. I'm going with Aswell by decision. That prop is sitting at plus 145, and I don't love the value of the prop, but there are 2 props that I do like a lot more, that I find more value in. The first one is the KO prop for Aswell. That's sitting at plus 440. We have seen in the past where Almeida's chin can kind of fail him a little bit, and especially since he keeps it a little too high up for my comfort. That 440 prop is pretty sick. On the other side of that, if Aswell loses, he's gonna lose by decision. And the prop right now for Almeida to win by decision, what is that? Let me see. That prop is at plus 430. That is also a really sick prop, especially like I said, when I think that's basically his only path to victory. I don't think he's going to submit him. I don't think he's going to knock him out. So if you're leaning towards if you're leaning towards Almeida, that decision prop is the prop for you. I'm telling you that. Well, this video has been long enough, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Stop by for our next video where we break down Joffel Filho versus Clayton Carpenter. Didn't get a chance to review how to pronunciate those names, so I probably look like a major jackass. But that is nothing new. But I'm done rambling, guys. Thank you for watching. I'm the fuck out of here.